Hi people, Moreno Ravenberg here again. In this video, I'll be discussing sports astrology or sports horary astrology and whether it has merit or not. This obviously is specifically for people that have an interest in astrology, but it's also fine if you also want to watch this video because you are, just generally speaking, interested in a topic or interested in occultism. Sorry. So yeah, let's get down to it. Sports horary astrology specifically, loosely put, is being able to predict the outcome of a sporting event or a match, let's just say a football or soccer match, specifically between two teams or two individuals that face off in each other in said sporting event or match. Like I said, an example is a soccer match or a football match. Of course, it can also possibly and potentially pertain to other branches of sporting events where multiple or only a single individual applies, but I'm sorry, I'm not too knowledgeable on that, and I'm not going to discuss that. I'm specifically going to discuss two-tier sporting events, if you will, and by two-tier I mean two teams that face off against each other, or two individuals that face off against each other with either a winning outcome, a draw, or a losing outcome. If you look up sports astrology or sports horary astrology or just sports horary, you'll find numerous websites that explain how to do it and how to get it done. I've also seen a couple of miscellaneous videos out there and whatnot, and of course, this sounds like a get-rich-quick scheme. It sounds unrealistic, and it falls under classical gambling, regardless of how you want to look at it. It's simply using astrology to predict the outcome of a gambling venture. And in reality, it is a get-rich-quick scheme, because if someone out there, or if if a couple of people have actually discovered this method, or they have actually found a way to be able to predict the outcome of matches successfully, non-stop, then it would be noticeable, at the very least noticeable or known. But as far as I know, there's no one out there, It would, in any case, you would have a lot of winners, to put it like that, but it is nothing more up to this point than a get-rich-quick scheme. A lot of people simply try, and usually the types that try this out are losers. I'm going to be blunt here. The losers that simply dream of getting rich quick, similar to buying a lottery ticket and hoping that by some kind of wonder you're going to win, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it is in essence a get rich quick scheme, and it has no practical merit or value, in the sense that no one out there has up to this point been capable of predicting this or coming up with a method for predicting it. While researching this topic, I visited a couple of the websites that you come across when Googling it, or when simply entering it in a search engine. And these websites give the basic outline for casting an horary chart, an horary astrological chart. The only difference is that, of course, two teams are taken into account, and no, that method is obviously incorrect, and I say so because I speak from experience. And yeah, that method applies to two individuals, for example, you versus an enemy, or for example, if you want to know something about an enemy and you want to know what that person is thinking, and then you will basically have the opposing party. But it doesn't apply, obviously, to sporting events. No, it just doesn't apply. There is no clear-cut strategy, as far as I know, that specifically outlines how to do so successfully back-to-back. No. In any case, that's what this video is about too. Okay, bottom line is that it does have merit in theory, because I have researched it, and in the beginning years, I researched it twice, recently and I think 4 years ago, when I was officially an astrologer, but I was not yet a competent occultist. That's how long ago it was. And I had the same, I'm not gonna lie, I had the same idea, the same thought. I will be blunt, I was also one of these losers, and I simply thought I was ignorant and naive in my thinking. I simply thought that I could, get rich quick too if I was able to find a method for casting horary charts in order to predict football matches, because I thought it was as simple as that. Back then I was still basically a novice, so I just didn't think further, honestly. I didn't think twice about it. But yeah, you learn through trial and error on the one hand. Only when looking back do I see how stupid I was and I see the error of my ways. I did the same thing that those websites are doing. I tried to cast a regular horary chart and of course it didn't work. I tried everything, it did not work. And I simply left it and I said to myself, nah, I might come back to it years ago. I might come back to it years after years or something. We'll see, but I'm leaving it for now. This was years ago, 2015. That's how long ago it was. We're in 2020 after all. And I recently went into it again because I was prompted by my occult work, my occult energy, to look into it again because it was still worth the effort. I'm going to start right away by saying that I did not succeed, but as is usual, almost always the case for me in these kinds of projects, I came so close, ridiculously close yet so far. I confirmed for myself that there is a method for casting for using horary astrology. There is a system that you can use within horary astrology. It's basically it's a modified version of the regular way to go about casting an horary chart. But it's a modified way on going about casting an horary chart. So not a regular chart, obviously. That one's not going to help because that pertains to individuals. That has reference to individuals and not to sporting events and teams and whatnot. No, it does not apply. Even when thinking about it, no, it doesn't apply because I immediately said to myself, wow, years ago, how could I have been so stupid? Because you can't cast a chart for an entire group of people. It only applies to one individual, but not to a group. At the very least, one individual representing a group of people in terms of unison, having one intent. But you can't cast a chart for a group of people. For example, you want to know the outcome between two football clubs that come out against each other, that play against each other. Casting a regular chart like that will not work, not in a million years, no. And long story short, I came up with a way. After researching for about a week, I did come up with a way, and I've confirmed for myself that method does have merit, that it is sound, it does work. And and yeah, it did work. I simply experimented, I made a couple of mistakes, I corrected my mistakes, and it's correct, I corrected my mistakes and everything works, I couldn't complain. Everything works. The only drawback is that this method is not foolproof for starters. It has an 80% success ratio, roughly estimated. I got it right 4 out of 5 times. So 4 out of 5 times I was able to successfully predict the outcome of a football match. Specifically, the only sport that really appeals to me would be soccer or football. So I simply use that as an example. And I simply I use primarily Premier League matches from the United Kingdom, so from England specifically. And I use those as an example, and I'm obviously not going to divulge my secret, absolutely not. That is my own company secret, my own entrepreneurial secret. But bottom line is that this method does work, and when casting, for example, 10 matches, I got 8 out of 10 correct. 2 were incorrect, for very elaborate reasons that I'm not going to get into, and it's best to not get into it because it will really give you a brain aneurysm. I'm not kidding. That's how nerve-wracking and how brain-wracking it is. But bottom line is that this method has roughly estimated an 80% success ratio, so 4 out of 5 times you'll get it right. The drawback is that it's a wild card, okay? I'm simply basing this off the fact that I experimented with 10 matches and I got 8 out of 2 correct. But it's possible that number slightly varies. But generally speaking, it is correct. I've confirmed this for myself. So I know that this method is sound and correct, with the minor difficulties being, as I said, it's not foolproof for very elaborate reasons. Other things that I have to mention, yeah, you might wonder too why I'm not using it for myself, because I am not gonna use it for myself. I'm done with that project, to be honest, permanently. And you're wondering, why don't I use this method to bet on matches and win a lot of money, buckets of money, blah blah blah. For starters, I'm the all or nothing type. For me, generally speaking, there is no middle ground. I'm all about all or nothing, and that's just my the perfectionist in me coming out or screaming. Better said, for me, something is either done perfectly to its fullest of extents, or it's not done at all. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that after noticing that the technique or the method I used wasn't foolproof, I delved deeper into it research-wise, and I came up with several methods to basically to work around the fact that it wasn't foolproof, or I tried to come up with a method that is foolproof. And boy, from there, that's where the brain aneurysm part begins. From there, it was literally so hard to keep track of everything, because for one, when you're busy in such an elaborate way, the danger is also the danger becomes present of getting caught in a can't see the forest through the trees syndrome, as in you metaphorically can't see the forest through the trees. You're literally stuck in a ball of yarn that you kept weaving round and round, and everything is stuck to everything, and everything is in knots. Bottom line is that it becomes hard at a certain point. Not that that bothers me too much, but I need to point it out. To keep track of everything, you really need to be organized here and keep track of everything you do. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between left and right regarding your tactics, because you went too deep and you didn't document everything. That's the second reason. And yeah, most importantly, as I developed other techniques, one or two other techniques that did seem foolproof, and I confirmed it too, all of a sudden things started taking a turn for the worse. Along the lines of logic not being applicable anymore, and this is really annoying. Okay, because people that are familiar with astrology know that astrology is like math. Astrology is like math. It's simply 2 + 2 = 4. There's logic behind the whole system. If you take basic rules and guidelines into account, you're good. But with this method, as I developed it, things did not make sense at all at a certain point. And the rule of 2 + 2 = 4, so the rule of logic, didn't apply anymore to my agitation, severe agitation. I literally was like, what the fuck? Why does this not make sense anymore all of a sudden? It's supposed to be this. A plus B is supposed to equal C. Why all of a sudden, am I getting contradictory results? Why am I getting results or outcomes that defy logic, the whole logic behind it all? And I'm also not a person to really keep things in the long run. I'm really short and straightforward, and I said to myself, listen, this either works or it doesn't, and I'm definitely not going to spend too much time and so on already, because otherwise I'm going to sell myself short, and I'm not going to put my life on hold, so to speak, because that was the case. I worked feverishly for a week or so, and I'm already an expert, even if I say so myself, so that's why it only took me a week. For me, it's nothing. I've cast thousands of charts, literally. So this was nothing for me, the majority of which are horary charts. So I'm very well versed in horary astrology on an expert level, even if I say so myself again. So yeah, at a certain point things didn't make sense anymore, because I had developed a foolproof method, but then it didn't make sense anymore. I was like, okay, now I'm starting to really get a brain aneurysm, because all of a sudden 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 anymore, where that was the case beforehand. And regardless of what I tried, I got the majority of matches correct, but there would always be 1 or 2 matches. You'd always have 1 or 2 matches which literally defied logic, and I was like, nah, this doesn't make sense anymore, and I really don't know what to think anymore. And yeah, that's when I simply called it quits. So yeah, that's the second reason. And last but not least, for me, the risk doesn't outweigh the reward. Bottom line is the risk does not outweigh the reward. It's not worth, with such a success ratio, it's not worth betting on a match and not knowing for sure if you're going to get it correct. For me, I'm the kind of person that really, as a perfectionist, I want to get it correct every single time. And of course, in real life, that's not feasible. But when you're dealing with something relating to betting or gambling, especially when you've got a lot of resources invested in such a gamble, then you better believe the risk has to outweigh the reward like no other. You really need to have a foolproof method, because that's the kind of person I am. I depend on reliability. I demand reliability. And for me, that success rate, for me, it's still a wild card. It's still no different than gambling, to be honest, albeit with the odds in my favor, but still. My point is that I want a guarantee, especially when it comes to gambling. I mean, in general affairs or under general circumstances, I wouldn't mind so much, but when it comes to gambling, absolutely not. It is the risk definitely does not outweigh the reward. Simple example is that you bet on a football match or a soccer match. Okay, you bet $10,000 on it. A lot of money, $10,000, 10K, and imagine, just your luck, that 20% match being a match that you bet on. Boom, there goes your $10,000. You lost 10,000 in one hit. And it doesn't matter whether you win, and bottom line is that you get 50 times what you put in. The 10,000 turns into $500,000. Bottom line is that the risk still does not outweigh the reward. Okay? I mean, that way you can easily squander a small fortune. You can squander your annual income even in one hit pop. And that's what I'm talking about. It's literally just not worth the risk. The risk, again, does not outweigh the reward. And that's why I don't use it for myself. I'm going to close off by saying that if anyone is still interested in this method, I'm more than happy to share it with you. Obviously, not for free. You can count on that. Obviously not. But if you're seriously interested in it, and you either want to buy this method, or you want to buy the rights to this method, or you're just interested in this method and you're willing to pay for it, then contact me and contact me via the contact options on my website, and we can take things from there. But that's pretty much all the information I have on this matter. And I just like to remind people, this is also why I have an article called Don't Gamble or Play the Lottery. This is also why I'm not fond of gambling. What appealed to me this much is the concept of being able to predict something with such that is so unpredictable by using an occult technique like astrology. So it's obviously appealing to me. It was very appealing, and not because of the potential thingies, not because of the potential winnings, but because of the technique itself. And especially when I confirmed for myself that it is possible. You can use horary astrology to predict matches, two-tier matches where two teams or two individuals face off against each other, to predict the outcome successfully. You can, but like I said, the only problem I had during researching is just the fact that logic literally all of a sudden didn't prevail anymore. But yeah, as an occultist, I obviously, the whole purpose of what I do is to pretty much defy logic, or at the very least bend logic, and to go against conventional methods, and to go against logic itself even, up to a certain degree or extent. But still, from a mathematical, so astrological perspective, an occult mathematical perspective, I just that was definitely something that I did not see coming, and honestly, I just scratched my head. The only thing that I can say is that as a potential factor, why that all of a sudden why that all of a sudden, why logic all of a sudden didn't prevail or was not applicable anymore, is the fact that horary astrology, not a lot of people know this, horary astrology is heavily reliant upon clairvoyance, one's intuition. That means that you need to really be able to look a lot further down the road than you can act than the average person. So if you're going to just follow the basic guidelines and you're practicing horary astrology, then it's not going to work. I can tell you right now, not going to work. But if you seriously want to, if you're seriously involved in horary astrology and you want that, I still remember this as a beginner, because I also noticed that if you're seriously interested in astrology, you're seriously going about it and blah, 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 then you'll notice that you need a tremendous amount of insight of a clairvoyant nature. You really need to be able to connect the dots where there are no dots at all. You need to be able to find the dots metaphorically, then connect them. And if you're just someone that does things a cookie cutter way, you're used to doing things in a conventional way, then nah. Horary astrology, you're gonna get no further than the basics. But if you want insight into a situation in terms of the outcome, you really need to have a tremendous amount of insight. That's also why generally speaking, occultists like myself will be able to cast charts better. That's what I noticed ever since I was a beginner. Horary astrology, the basic guidelines will literally only take you just that, past the basics. After that, you solely rely on your level of insight and your level of clairvoyance in order to make out what is what and what means what and so on, depending on the context of your inquiry or your question. For the rest, if you don't have that, then it's not going to work. You're not going to get any further than just basic charts that will only give away basic information. But no, in such a situation, you need tremendous levels of insight. And in my case, I had to literally create a new system, not literally a new astrological system, but I had to create a strongly modified version of horary astrology, a side branch, if you will, or side branches, if you will. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to know more, then just look in the description below. You'll find the article of which I read. I also have an article on my website. You can find it again in the link. You can find the link in the description below. Sorry. And I'm also going to place the link of the other article that I mentioned. Don't gamble or play the lottery. You can also find that article as second article in the description of this video below. That's it. So I'll hear it if anyone has anything on their mind or if anyone is interested in this method. And that's all. Bye.